You're watching The Legal Breakdown. So, Glenn, during Erin Burnett's show on CNN, she and a real estate expert discussed the possibility of Donald Trump being forced to sell his prized asset, Mar-a-Lago. Is this a real possibility for Trump?
It's a real possibility if he wants to go about trying to satisfy the massive money judgment that has been entered against him. I actually think he continues to try to duck and dodge and, put disinformation into the mix about how it's a practical impossibility. Those are his words in his recent court filing. And he is trying to use that, Brian, as a way to convince the New York appeals court not to make him have to put up either the full amount or a bond guaranteeing that he will pay out the full amount if he loses the appeal. He's using all of these, half-baked arguments to try to convince the court not to make him put up the full amount. Now, we haven't heard a decision from the appeals court, but interestingly, when Tish James, the attorney general who successfully sued Donald Trump, the New York State attorney general, responded to Donald Trump's practical impossibility motion, she said, guess what? The New York state law does not even allow the appeals court to do what Donald Trump is asking it to do. Basically, don't make me put up the money to perfect my right for an appeal. Just kind of spot me that. Like it's the fraud reduction program, I guess, fraud forgiveness program.
Yeah.
So I think selling Mar-a-Lago could be a way that he could begin to satisfy the money judgment. But here's the thing. We have no idea how much equity he has in Mar-a-Lago. We don't know how highly leveraged it is. I do know that in the practical impossibility filing, Donald Trump lied again. He wouldn't give up the fraud. He said, yeah, I know Judge Engoron, relying on all the expert testimony during my fraud trial, said Mar-a-Lago is worth somewhere between, I think, 18 million and 27 million. But he's wrong. He said it's worth 50 to 100 times that. Well, guess what? If it really was, Donald Trump would have no problem coming up with either the liquid assets by
Right.
borrowing against the value of Mar-a-Lago or getting somebody to put up a bond for him. But he can never give up the con, give up the lie. So now he's in a position where he may be forced to sell Mar-a-Lago, which is not going to be easy to do like on a moment's notice. And he's complaining in his motion that, I don't want to have to engage in a fire sale. So think about the gall of this man. He still wants to do things on his own schedule, right? It's kind of
Right.
that he thinks he still gets to set the terms at this point. But based on the reporting, it looks like him having to unload Mar-a-Lago quickly and probably at a significant loss, maybe in the offing.
At this point, it does look like he will have to offload some real estate if that's where all of his money is in, correct?
He will. And how do you offload real estate that's worth millions and millions of dollars in a week's time? Because Monday is the deadline. Monday is the day Tish James can begin actually seizing stuff, even though she's already filed these judgments. So she is protecting these assets from being, moved or transferred. And there are presently now liens against some of Donald Trump's property. How do you go about selling something like Mar-a-Lago to somebody in a week? I mean, maybe somebody from Russia or Saudi Arabia will sweep in with big bags of cash and enter into a quick deal with Donald Trump. I don't think that's beyond the realm of possibility.
No, I don't either. And that was my next question: is what do you think the dangers are and the possibility is of Donald Trump looking to outside investors out of the country, and what implications will that have for somebody who may very well be the next president of the United States?
Yeah, compromise, compromise, compromise. If you have somebody who has that kind of financial leverage over you, you are beholden to them for hundreds of millions of dollars, a foreign government or foreign entity or foreign actor. Just think about where that puts Donald Trump's loyalties. Can we really rely on him to do what's in the best interest of the American people if it might conflict with what's in his own financial interests when dealing with a government like Saudi Arabia? So, it's funny because I've been through a series of background investigations over the course of my 30 years with the federal government, both the Department of Defense when I was an Army JAG, the FBI when I was with the Department of Justice. And one of the standard questions is there anything that could serve as leverage? Does somebody live beyond their financial means? Are they susceptible to compromise or blackmail because they're in debt? The answer to those questions is you bet Donald Trump is susceptible to all of that if he is beholden to a foreign country or a foreign government to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars.
Now, you alluded to this before, but there is reporting in the Daily Beast that the Attorney General, Letitia James, has already begun the process of seizing Donald Trump's Seven Springs estate. So can you speak on that?
Yeah, so Donald Trump's family has an estate, and it's 212 acres in Westchester County, north of New York. I don't know that there's been reporting about the precise value, but the reporting calls it a storied Trump estate. It's a mansion. And Tish James has filed her judgment in the civil fraud case with the Westchester County Clerk's Office, which means that there is now, in fact, a lien against that property, meaning if anybody ran the deed, they would see that a lien has been placed by the state of New York through the Attorney General on that property such that it cannot be disposed of in any way. Loans can't be taken out against it. So what she is doing is perfecting her ability to go ahead and seize the property and then dispose of it as she sees fit to try to begin to satisfy the $500 million money judgment that will come due beginning on Monday. She gave him a 30-day grace period, which technically she didn't have to do, but she did. And I think the only thing stopping Tish James from beginning to seize his properties is if the appellate court steps in and somehow does something that they're not technically authorized to do, which would grant some kind of a stay on Donald Trump's requirement that he put up the full amount or that he put up a bond guaranteeing the full payout so that he can go ahead and file an appeal without Tish James beginning to seize his assets. Now, remember, he can still file an appeal if he can't get a money bond and he doesn't have the liquid assets to put up. But during the pendency of the appeal, Tish James can absolutely seize all of his stuff to begin to satisfy the money judgment.
And presumably, she'll start putting liens on other properties, not just the Seven Springs, unless the Seven Springs satisfies the full $500 million. Is that right?
I would assume that's right. And who knows what the value of it is. And more importantly, who knows how encumbered it is by mortgages, right, by debt, by lines of credit. So, I suspect if we begin to see some transparency on Donald Trump's properties, we're going to see that he doesn't actually own much of any of those properties. That's just my suspicion.
Now let's finish off with this. Donald Trump complained on Truth Social, I know, shocker, that if he wins appeal, he'll have already sold his assets to satisfy his bond. So is there any merit to that?
I'm sorry about your luck, sport, but the reality is Donald Trump may be right about that. But when the law says you must put up the full amount, deposit it in the escrow account of the court, then you can appeal without selling anything or get a bond guaranteeing full payout in the event you lose the appeal. Then you don't have to sell anything. But the law also says the winning litigant has a right to begin to force, compel, seize property of the losing litigant to satisfy the judgment. Donald Trump may be right. If I have to sell Mar-a-Lago and other properties to satisfy this judgment, I may then win the appeal a year from now, and what? I'm not going to get my properties back? No, but you know what you will have at that point? You'll have a cause of action against Attorney General Tish James and the state of New York to be made whole. So what that might look like is if he had to sell Mar-a-Lago to put up $500 million, it could be that he could bring suit or otherwise negotiate with the state of New York to get $500 million back. He wouldn't get Mar-a-Lago back if it was already sold and lawfully owned by somebody else. So he may actually not be wrong about that. But you know what the thing is? That's how the law works. And
Right.
Tish James is following the rules. And if there are some less than optimal consequences that flow to Donald Trump as a result of her following the rules and him having engaged in massive business fraud over the years, it's kind of tough luck.
You know what they say, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. So with that said, we'll obviously stay on top of all of this as this whole process continues to play itself out. So for those watching right now, if you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.